This video is going to be dedicated to how I'm racing gravel in 2025. Okay, so we have quite a bit to chat about. So this is going to be a fairly long video, I can imagine. Let's get to it. We raced the Santaval, which is a Girona-based 2-day gravel stage race, and it kind of kicks off the European racing calendar. Years ago, this didn't used to be a big race, but now it's become quite a big race. The roster of riders is probably the most elite it's ever been. It's run by the same people who run the Tracker, and it's 80 kilometer stage on the Saturday and then 128 kilometer on the Sunday. Now, this video, we're going to talk about the Santaval. We're going to talk about how I'm racing gravel, what I'm racing gravel with, the equipment I'm using, the clothing I'm using, the stuff that I use to make my life easier when graveling, essential pieces of equipment that you need to race with that will definitely get you out of some extremely sticky situations if you should find yourself in them. I'm going to talk about how I film gravel racing and the equipment I use there, because I also make a huge amount of content on Instagram and TikTok, and so a lot of the content that I've already produced from this event has already gone out on those platforms. Okay, we're going to talk about stage 1 of La Santaval. So to be fair, preparation for this for the last couple of weeks has been generally really good. We've been clocking anywhere between 21 to 15 hours on the bike. So we've had really good winter prep, which makes a massive change from how I approached last year. Last year I spent some time dotting about, just doing some random challenges, and there's a way more direction, and I feel way more fulfilled this year with my training. So majority of this has been sort of just long endurance rides with some like hard efforts in there. We have also come back from a month in Australia. Been really good training. We've had some great training, and I can currently do 278 watts for 20 minutes. That's kind of what my 20-minute power is at the moment. Honestly, I would say that my 20-minute power is actually quite weak. It's probably one of my weakest things. My 1-minute power is far better than any of the rest of my powers. Actually not particularly useful for gravel racing. Going into stage 1 of the Santaval, the training's been going well, but the 2 previous days I had some sort of life commitments to go back to London and do, and they weren't particularly, nice things. So I landed pretty late on Friday afternoon, knowing that I was going to be racing on Saturday morning. So my expectations were kind of already low going into Santaval, but saying this, my mentality towards racing, which has been ingrained in me by my friend Thomas, has completely changed, and this has made a massive difference, and we'll get to that. So stage 1 of Santaval goes immediately up a climb, and most gravel races throughout the year will do this, because it's the reason why they do this is to split up the field, because it has previously happened in the previous 4 years that I've done gravel where the race is funneled into like one corner, and politely, as much as it's fun to watch online, it is absolute carnage to deal with, and the organizers don't want it and the racers don't want it, and I think everybody's thankful, even though it really hurts, because you're going absolutely out of the box like as soon as you leave the finish line. That's the reason why there's massive hills, and usually they're about 20 minutes long. So that is one of the main reasons why I'm really keen to improve my 20-minute power, because there's no shying away from it. They're going to be there and they're not going away. So the stage kind of just goes up and down all day. There's not really too many flat roads, and it's mostly gravel. There's a few road sections in there, and then it finishes with like a kind of technical sort of woody section. Then it finishes. I mean, going 80k, I kind of went into this going, I'm just going to go full gas up every single climb, just see if my legs hold out. And actually, all the way to the finish, my legs held out, and I had really good legs all day, I would say. Actually, I got a lot more out of my body than I would normally get out by racing in this kind of style. We finished that stage in 2 hours and 40 minutes. We were only 3 minutes behind Greg Van Avermaet. I think we put away a good 50 elite riders that day, so actually really stoked with how that went. It's a great way to see Girona. Girona's not massively busy at that time, so yeah, definitely a good race to put on the calendar, and that was stage 1. So we're going to talk about my gravel setup. So I use this bike. This is my gravel setup, and this is what I'm going to be using for this year. So I'm actually sponsored by Colnago, so please bear that in mind. But it is a phenomenal bike. And so this is the Colnago C68 gravel bike, and I have the same in the road bike version in a different color. You'll be crazily surprised how strong the spokes are. I always get people to feel like how strong the spokes are because they're carbon, they're glued, they're all handmade in Germany, by the way. I use 160mm rotors front and rear. I think that's a good recommendation for gravel racing just because the larger rotor gives you more braking power. I run full Shimano GRX. I'm not actually sponsored by Shimano, and I think actually my preferable setup would be SRAM. I run the 2x, which actually is more favorable for me than the 1x, just because I've seen so many 1x chains come off. I'm not going to sit here and say that my chain doesn't come off with the 2x setup, but the front derailleur, the ability to have a front derailleur that moves, allows me to put the chain back on when I'm racing, and so that's massively helpful. Currently, we are sponsored by Pirelli. So I did use a Hutchinson Tundra on the front. That's a mud tire. It was quite muddy at Santoval this year, so this really was actually pretty optimal. And then we had a Pirelli Cinturato on the back, another really good tire, but we will be running full Pirelli setup. Delivery arrives. It's a bloody nightmare to get things delivered in Spain, by the way. We run 4831 chain rings on the front, and I believe that's 1135 cassette on the back, and that is plenty. We're up some really steep stuff at the La Santoval, and I won't be changing this. The only thing I will be changing is the cranks to 165s. Actually want a power meter, so I'd recommend trying to, if you've got a power meter on your road bike, try and have the same brand power meter on your gravel bike or just on all of the same bikes, just because the power will all read fairly the same that way, because there's massive differences between SRM, SRAM, Shimano, Stages. Always 2 bottle cages, you'd be an idiot not to run that. Then I'll have a saddlebag, and yeah, in the saddlebag we'll have things that I think are essential for gravel racing, and we'll get to that. We will talk about the clothing that I use, so let's get to it. Okay, as you can see, I'm not actually in cycling attire. Today is a rest day for me. I am actually sponsored by Rapha, so all the clothing that I wear, bar like sometimes the socks, is Rapha. And so I'm going to talk you through the Rapha products that I use that I think are actually the most optimal for gravel racing. At the start of the year, it's quite chilly, so for La Santoval, I rode in these long cargo bibs. Now, I also train in these a huge amount just because the pockets are useful for putting in your phone, and again, quite useful for filming a gravel race if you're also looking to get content along the way. This has got the classic Rapha chamois in here, and this one is dead comfortable. Not complaining in these. These have got like a Roubaix material inside, so they're kind of furry on the inside, and they're really, really warm. Great for winter riding. I would wear these in the UK winter, the Spanish winter, and then any of the winter gravel races as well. When it comes to later in the season, when it starts to warm up, which it will do soon, I'll wear the Rapha cargo bibs. Now, I've worn quite a few different brands of cargo bibs previously to when I was sponsored by Rapha, and I have actually found that these ones are the best. So in terms of just like the quality at which like this bit, which is the cargo bit, it's kind of manufactured, you can fit a lot of stuff. And so I'll often put, we'll talk about some of these tools, but the tools and stuff will sit in the bib here. And this will be, especially the tools that I need to hand, especially if my tire is going down quickly, I'll have this like my dyno plug tool, and I'll have it in here so that it's really easy to reach. And you can also put like nutrition in here. On the back of the bib short, you also have pockets here, so you can fit, especially for the really, really long gravel races. And I presume that most of the people watching these are not going to have people handing bottles for you, or swannying for you. So carrying as much of the food as you can possibly carry, you basically lower the amount of time that you need to spend stopping and picking up stuff from aid stations. I personally hate picking up stuff from aid stations just because it's nutrition that I've never used before. I don't want to stop either. I don't want my legs to sort of like shrink up a little bit. Okay, bibs. So for the slightly shorter gravel races, I would say another good option if you don't want to use cargo bibs is these Rapha Power Weave bib shorts. These are phenomenal. These are my favorite Rapha bib. I will tell you now that they are really expensive, but they are worth the money, and the quality is phenomenal in my opinion. These are the shorts that I definitely wear the most because I don't always wear the cargo shorts when I'm training. So those are sick. Jersey wise, I almost always race in the Rapha Pro Team race jersey basically. And so this is an EF Education one, which looks sick. This is this year's team. It's a lightweight jersey. It's a super lightweight jersey. It's got really nice material on the arms. It comes up to like where the elbow is, so it fits quite long. Really like this. If you want something a little bit lighter, which can give you a bit more airflow, and keeping cool is also the aim of the game in gravel racing, and I'll get to that. So this is the new Pro Team training jersey, and this has got like a slightly more see-through material, which is nice if you're trying to keep cool, and that's its purpose. Both have similar sized pockets. You can get plenty of stuff in there. For the start of the gravel races, it can be pretty cold in the mornings. This is the Pro Team GTX rain jacket. This has been in my back pocket every single day. And it's got this kind of like stretchy material around the shoulders, and then the stretchy material around the cuffs on your sleeves. This is not only perfect for like keeping you dry in the rain, that's probably its main sole purpose, but also keeping you warm for those like really cold mornings. I think there's this misconception that Spain is just hot all year. It's bloody freezing sometimes in the morning here. So anyway, this is great for keeping you warm, but it's also great for heat training. So I'll wear this for the last hour, and this is a massive hack because you're going to be racing in the heat in gravel racing by the time the season's kicked off. So wearing this for the last hour of the training means you're going to sweat a ton, and it's a great way to adapt to the heat without being in a country where it's massively hot. There's no shying away from the heat in gravel racing. It's going to be there. You're going to be racing in the heat, so just try and adapt as much as possible. One thing you should definitely not do: you should not try and heat train during the middle of your training session, because you will sweat an absolute ton, and you'll sweat through your bibs, and eventually you'll just be freezing cold. Don't do that. I've made the mistake. Learn from my mistake. Bosh. Those are a few other Rapha items. Write in the comments if you want me to talk about any other pieces of clothing that I'm wearing. Again, I just love wearing the Rapha cotton socks. I did ask for some questions, and one of the questions you asked was road or MTB pedals for gravel. Now, I swear by this, but just going with mountain bike pedals, because Santaval was a great example of somebody losing the race because they couldn't get their foot in their shoe when they had to get off. Not much hiker bike sex. Hiker bike is basically you getting off the bike and hiking the bike. And there's not that much of it, but the times when it happens are hugely defining moments in the race. I think Unbound 2 years ago, where there was this enormous mud section, so many individuals who traveled from all over the world had been caught out by this section because they were running road shoes and they couldn't get their foots clipped back in to their road shoes. Now, I run the SPD pedals, and you just have to get used to racing and riding in them. But for the sake of just those moments, those really, really crucial moments, I always swear by mountain bike pedals. Another person asked, how many watts per kg do you think you need to qualify for the Gravel World Champs? Now, last year, I'll tell you what watt per kg I did to qualify. We'll go on this app called Training Peaks that I use. It's a really, really good app for recording all your training. I think most individuals in the cycling world use this. So if you're not already using Training Peaks, you should definitely consider doing so. So in 2024, I did 280 watts for 20 minutes. That was my best 20-minute power. And I qualified for the Gravel World Championships in Leuven, Belgium.
You qualified.
We did it. Yeah?
Yeah.
No fucking way.
Up there, look at it. It's up there, I swear. I saw you right next to
Oh my God. We qualified for Worlds, bro. That's so sick, man. I'm so happy. That was so worth it. So that's 4.8 watts per kilo. But really and truly, being on it with your nutrition, being on it with your racecraft, and being on it with your setup and knowing how to fix a puncher will take you much further than just like a couple 0.1s on your watt per kg. Those are kind of the lower hanging fruit. You know, the training is the training. Of course, you've only got so much time in the day that you can train. So these are all the other things that you can do to like make up for that. Picking a good qualifying round is also really important. The nations where they love cycling the most generally are the ones where they'll have the most participants and where you can qualify the easiest, because it's the top 25% of the people in the age category of that race that then qualify. So Netherlands, Belgium, the UCI in Scotland gets lots of people to ride there. So stage 2 of La Santabao was 128 kilometers. We did 1600 meters of elevation, and I did this one in 3 hours and 51 minutes. And Strava said I did average watts of 248. I don't think that's true. I think I did about 230 watts for almost 4 hours. Again, this went up an enormous climb at the start, again, going full gas. I made the slight mistake where I got to the bottom of the climb and I was completely gassed by the time I got to the bottom, because I started at the back and I was moving forward, but I moved forward like too intensely, and I kind of got to the bottom of the climb and I was cooked, and so I had to go full. But like, yeah, I had to put my body into like serious red. And to be fair, I rode the rest of the day putting my body into the red quite a lot. I was riding quite tenaciously, I would describe, and that was generally because I just wanted to get the most out of my body. This is a super early gravel race, using a bit of training as well, so I was just like trying to push my body as far as I could. And we'll get to this, the mentality towards racing and stage 2, because somebody asked a really good question about this. But yeah, so it was up and down all day. Again, like stage 1, the Spanish were descending like absolute madmen, risking their life for every inch of road that they... And it's so funny because once one of them gets it wrong, they just laugh about it. It's so funny. I did have another really, really good day on the bike. I got absolutely popped with like 12 kilometers to go. I was just like going as hard as I could to hold the wheel, and I just couldn't. I had got to that point in the race and I really felt like I got the most out of it. So I wasn't really too disappointed. For both of the days, my like food strategy was actually to use mostly Morton carb mix. So for stage 1, I just used carb mix because it was going to be short, sharp, aggressive racing. And I didn't really feel like I needed any gels, and I didn't. But stage 2, I needed to eat 1 caffeine gel and then 2 normal gels, then an entire bottle. And then I also had another bottle, another larger bidon with some electrolytes in there. But generally you want to load up with electrolytes in the mornings. Again, I had another really good result for me. I put away a good 50 elite riders. I finished in the top 10, I think, in age group that day. So really happy with how things went, despite my legs leaving the chat with about 12 kilometers to go. But the form is there. So I made like 2-3 pieces of content on Instagram about La Santabao, and so I'm going to tell you how I film a gravel race. So I use the Insta360 X4, so it has phenomenal stabilization. It can capture a 360 view of everything around me. I attach it to my bike like this, and this I found is probably the most secure way using the Insta360 official mount. You can also mount your bicycle computer. I now shoot in 8K. It means that if you need to really zoom in on something, like, it kind of gives you a better quality version of that. You can get a free accessory with Insta360 if you purchase via the link in the description. I bought an Insta360 before we worked with them. They're now working with us. I do gain some commission from this, but I do believe it is the best gravel racing or on-bike computer that exists currently on the market. So if you've bought one via my link, thank you so much. If you want one, you can get a free accessory with one in the description. Shout out Insta for hooking it up. Yeah, capturing all the minerals on and off the floor with the Insta360 these days. So let's get it. So I also supplement the Insta360 footage with iPhone footage, just because the iPhone has unbelievable stability. I mean, that is probably one of the things that people talk about the least, but the stability in the iPhone camera is unreal. And with gravel racing as well, I would say that most people generally carry phones with them. So, because a lot of guys will get stuck out on course if their bike's completely broken or they've double punctured, and knowing when to put the camera on is also really, really useful. So I generally look to see if I can see some carnage situation happening. I'll turn the camera on. I always film the start because, again, that's another part of the race where there's almost carnage guaranteed. Regardless, you're going to be riding through people, or people are going to be riding around you. And yeah, anyway, it's hilarious. I live for it, to be fair. So somebody asked a really, really good question, which is, what was my mentality into the different stages? So because 80 kilometers in terms of a gravel race is actually quite short, I just went in there going, I'm going to go as hard as I can up every climb. That's where I feel like my watt per kilo has the most influence. So that's what I decided to do. And so I pinned it up every climb I could. Didn't really care about how my legs we're going to feel towards the end. I knew what my fueling strategy was, so I just stay on top of that, and if my legs go, then my legs go. And I knew going into stage 2 that my legs were just going to hurt a bit more. So I went into the race going, my legs are going to hurt more than normal. So just prepare yourself for like slightly more pain. I definitely pulled my weight. I was a bit more like sensible in terms of like energy consumption and like saving some of my energy towards the end of the race. And in hindsight, I probably didn't save enough because I popped with like 12k to go. So you live and you learn. During the race, I use full Morton nutrition. So I use the carb mix and mostly the gels. And if it's a really, really long race, like 180k, then I'll use the bars. When I'm training, I generally use the bars and carb mix. Again, it's really good to get used to the nutrition that you're using in training. So don't just leave it all to race day, because then your gut might not be too familiar with what you're using. Diet wise, I eat a huge amount of pasta and rice, a huge amount of eggs at the moment. I make this chorizo shashuka at the moment. That's probably one of my favorite things to make. Let's talk about some of the little pieces of equipment and tools and stuff that I carry in my saddlebag, on my bike and in my pockets that will help you in a gravel race and will stop you from destroying your day. This is the saddlebag I use. It's not too small, it's not too big. Ensure it's got a really, really good strap. Carry one of these. In the saddlebag, I'm going to carry a full set of multi-tools. So this is from Toe Peak. Yeah, there's a few pieces missing, but it's just got like a full set of Allen keys. I like this one. You could also use like a small Allen key, really, really useful, just in case small things leave the chat. If you need to take your wheel out, you're definitely going to need an Allen key. In the saddlebag also goes Dynaplug heads, which I'll tell you about that tool in a second, and a spare rear derailleur hanger. And I put this in a little baggie, and that stops any of those things rusting or like moving around. When I'm racing, I'll carry 3 things in my pockets. We'll start with probably the one you're going to use the least. This tool. This is like an electronic pump, and I'll use this if I need to just put a little bit of pressure in one of my tires. I feel like it's going down, but it hasn't come off the bead yet. If I've got a puncture, or if I just feel like the pressure is low, I'll use this. Really easy to use. Just double. Yeah, there we go. That's how that works. Really good tool. Not hugely expensive, but this is a CO2 canister with a CO2 canister releaser. This I'll use if my tire's gone really, really flat and I need to punch a lot of air into my tire really quickly. So this works almost instantaneously. This bit gets really, really cold. So watch your hands for when you're using this. Don't go into a race having never used this before. If you're about to do a gravel race and you don't know how to use this, that you might as well have not carried it. So don't waste your time. Learn how to use this before you race with it. This tool, now this is called a Dynaplug tool, and they come from all different brands. This is the Dynaplug one. I've lost many of these, and they cost a lot. They're not cheap, but basically this is where the Dynaplug tool heads go in, and these go into the tire. They kind of spread out, and these will seal a tire. So this tool is great, but you only need this tool if you're running tubeless. And if you're not running tubeless, then honestly, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure here. So on road bikes, you can kind of get away with it, but on gravel bikes, you really, really should be running tubeless. And this is a great tool that goes hand in hand with tubeless. So the sealant will come out and it will usually seal, but if the hole is too big, then you need to put one of these in. And that's what you'll do mid-race. And get used to practicing how to do this. If you get a puncture on a gravel ride, practice doing it quickly, because in a gravel race, they're not going to sit up and wait for you politely. I wouldn't wait for you, and you wouldn't wait for me. Bosh. That's actually the only things I carry with me for a gravel race. And I think I've been doing gravel racing for almost 4 years now, and I think I've got it pretty dialed. So if you've got anything to add in the comments that you think would be useful, be my guest. Actually, this is a tool. I would say this is a tool. So glasses. I used to not wear glasses. I raw dogged cycling for many years, not wearing glasses, until one day I raced Unbound and I got a rock in the eye that gave me a black eye. And ever since that day, I've worn glasses, especially at the start of a gravel race, because rocks will flick, especially at Unbound, but many other gravel races as well. Rocks will hit people's wheels. They'll flick into somebody's spoke and then they'll shoot upwards, and they will crack you in the eye or in the face or in the teeth. People have lost teeth in gravel racing. Just wear glasses. I'd recommend these Oakleys. they've definitely seen better days. But right, one last thing. So if you want to see a bit more content around gravel racing, I make loads of content on Instagram, and that's generally the content that I get out the fastest. So if you're not following on Instagram, go do that. I'm going to update the Spotify playlist. So if you're lacking morale and you need some music to get you through your efforts, the Spotify playlist will hook you up. I've been slacking a little bit on the SoundCloud mixes. I actually left my laptop in Adelaide, which has all the music on, and so that delayed any form of mix making. But we'll get back on the mixes. If you like mixes rather than playlists, then SoundCloud is the place for you. This is how I'm going to be racing gravel in 2025. Let's get it.